The world is watching with their ears.
Tonight's guest is Dr. Tyler A. Kokjohn, who you may remember from a few episodes ago with Carol Rainey. He is the author of Tainted, Toxic, and Taboo, One Scientist's Assessment of Alien Abduction Research, available right now in the free preview of Paratopia Magazine, the full edition of which is due out next week. Dr. Kokjohn received his PhD degree in biochemistry from Loyola University in Chicago and is presently a professor of microbiology at Arizona College of Osteopathic Medicine and an adjunct senior scientist at Banner Sun Health Research Institute in Sun City, Arizona. Beginning his research career in investigating the molecular mechanisms of DNA repair in bacteria and viruses in 1998, he joined a group investigating Alzheimer's disease, biochemistry, and the effects of immunotherapy on brain pathology and cognition. His lifelong interest in the UFO phenomenon began in 1967 after reading Flying Saucers, Serious Business by Frank Edwards. During the episode, we reference some of his YouTube videos, and if you would like to view them, go to youtube.com and search for Rewinky, for that is his username on YouTube, R-E-W-I-N-K-Y, Rewinky. So please do go there and check out his explanatory videos that are really challenges to the science of ufology. I mean, not all of his videos are geared toward this, but a lot of them. And they're disguised as very simple instructional videos, not unlike the kind you would find on children's television. So I find that fascinating. I find Dr. Kokjohn fascinating. And we will get to our fascinating show right after these words.
If you record audio for any purpose, chances are you want it to be heard. You want to attract the largest audience possible who can hear your message. That's where we come in. We're CyberEars.com, a revolutionary internet service that will host your audio files and help you promote and track its popularity. Considering hosting a podcast to the world? We have all the automated tools to make the process as simple and easy as it can be. No technical mumbo-jumbo to work out. CyberEars.com does all the work for you. You record it, we take care of the rest. So don't delay. Go to CyberEars.com today and register for a free trial account. Upload your audio files and get heard. With CyberEars.com, it's your audio on your terms.
Paratopia, welcome to yet another exciting edition of our little show. This one is sort of more exciting in a way than normal because it was on the fly. It was supposed to be a small segment of a different show, but the conversation just kept going, so it evolved into its own show. As a result, I think some of it may be insider in a way and may need a little explanation. But first, our co-host, Jeff Ritzman.
Good evening, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Oh, that's right. I'm good.
Doesn't that sound professional, all of what I just said?
Sure.
Thanks.
What?
Yeah, so our guest, of course, is Dr. Tyler Kokjohn, who we wanted to have on for Jeff to surprise with a question. And frankly, Dr. Kokjohn was weary of surprises. He's not a fan of surprises, but he decided to come on and allow us to surprise him anyway, and I think he was pleasantly surprised. But some of what we talk about is UFO updates, I think, gets mentioned here. So yes. I think maybe certain things need a little setup. That when we're talking about UFO updates, this is a website that's sort of insider baseball for ufology. So if you've been hearing, from various ufologists and pundits that the whole Carol Rainey, Emma Woods, Hopkins, Jacobs thing doesn't matter. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody cares. That's a complete lie. If you go to UFO updates, you can see that it's just day after day after day talking about these issues and our show, which I found actually disconcerting because I didn't realize how much of that there was there. It's just funny to see.
There's a lot.
And good. I mean, great. So people are debating it, and wonderful. So Tyler decided to chime in there a little bit and have a go around with some people. So we talk a little bit about that. We also, of course, start off talking about Budd Hopkins has released his statement or whatever about Carol's article and sort of just dismisses Tyler by saying that that John Mack outranks him somehow. So Tyler, we don't have to pay attention to Tyler because John Mack outranks him. So apparently research is a rock, paper, scissors affair where paper beats rock. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah, that's correct. Tyler is largely worthless, and therefore I refer to him lovingly as Tyler.
So that.
Well, it's just more. It's what you've all come to expect from this field. Just more. More personality, and I'm better than you, more so than what the hell is going on and what is this? Put it that way. That's how I view it.
Yeah, and I guess I don't think Jeff and I feel the need to belabor, any sort of response to Budd's response because, frankly, he just peppered the entire thing with my angry ex, my ex-wife, my ex, my angry ex, and that's supposed to be what you concentrate on. So, I mean, it's pretty much a cheap reply as far as I'm concerned, and as far as any of the stuff in there that looks like it might be factually accurate, Carol Rainey will be releasing her rebuttal to that. So, and then hopefully that will be the end. I don't foresee that going back and forth forever and ever. I just think it's, once again, as we've seen with Jacobs and Emma, he said, she documented. And you can keep it he said, she said if you want, but that's really avoiding the issue. And I understand why people want to. There are a lot of friendships involved here and paradigms and all of that. But you know what? It's time to just... Yeah, don't you get sick of hearing me say it? It's time to move beyond all of that now, isn't it? When do we do this ufology?
Just as a side note, if you all would like to come to my home on Saturday night, I will be sacrificing a goat to the Dark Lord in the hopes that this entire affair fades into the background. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. The goat sacrifice will, not the fading. Speaking of goat sacrifice and Dark Lord, so the thing that we brought to Tyler was... Basically, it's something that your shroud guy gave to you to give to the world. Said, look, you can use this. And I think the thing that we didn't talk about in the interview, how this came about was that we, in the last after chat, started talking about our own sort of psychological peccadillos. How about? And one of those is your anger issues. And I think in response to that, this guy said, well, you want to really know why you're angry? Here's part of it. Here's the part that you're not going to be able to figure out on your own, basically. And the implications are staggering. And, I think are across the board. They're universal. They're for all of us. So if you want to talk more about that before we get into this, feel free.
The only thing really that to add to that is that I didn't see anything. I can't ultimately testify that it was the same guy, but it certainly felt the same, and it certainly had that inside audio quality of being that. So that's what I attributed it to at the time. And should I say exactly what it is, or I pretty much detailed that within the question that I asked Tyler. So there's little point in doing it in this before intro, but it was I mean, to be honest with everybody and just keep it all on the table, it it was probably one of the most benign. I would say, if it is the same thing, I would say it was the most easygoing and lightest and easiest to take portion of that kind of interaction. So I describe it better to Tyler as I'm asking him the question as opposed to me, which I'm just trying to kind of verify out a little bit. So, and the only thing I have to say past that is if anyone listening happens to know or know of someone or specializes in the field of brain chemistry or as it relates to eye movement, then please feel free to email us at paratopiapodcast@gmail.com and just put it to my attention. I would love to hear what everyone else thinks, whether you're inside this or not. So that's about it.
Yeah, and I guess just one more note that all of this part of it is in the beginning section, so it is all in the free section, as we tend to do with anything we feel has bigger implications than just our show. Because of course we don't want anyone claiming that we're just trying to make money or whatever. So we always do that. We did that with Brian Reed, so on and so forth. So without further ado, here is Tyler Kokjohn. Paratopia, we're bringing back the one, the only Dr. Tyler Kokjohn, because Jeff has a mystery question for him, and also, what the heck, we might as well get his opinion on Budd Hopkins' response to Carol Rainey's and his Carol Rainey's and his articles for Paratopia Magazine. Dr. Kokjohn, Tyler, thank you for coming on again, and welcome back.
Thank you.
So, I know you read Budd Hopkins' response. Did it leave you wanting, or did it fill in some blanks for you, or what was your feeling on it?
I was disappointed to find out I'm outranked.
That's right. So, explain that, so in case people didn't read it.
The only thing that I saw, and maybe I missed something in terms of what I contributed, was that Professor John Mack, a very eminent scientist, professor, MD, apparently just outranks me, and anything I say then is unworthy. So be it. Okay, I've been put in my place.
Huh. Yeah, I find it interesting that like the last two radio interviews I've seen with both him and David Jacobs, they've made an effort to say that John Mack was completely wrong with his take on abductions, and that his position was unfeasible even by his own evidentiary standards, and yet they're pulling the John Mack card to trump you.
It is interesting. The other thing is, maybe you guys could clarify for me. I hope somebody can. If John Mack is in fact the ultimate authority, why is his interpretation so cosmically different than theirs in terms of what they've discovered? I can't reconcile this. I don't get it.
I don't think it's meant to be gotten. I think that's
okay.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything to get. Jeff, do you want to chime in on the Hopkins rebuttal piece, or do you not care?
No, I care, certainly. I mean, to me, Jeremy, do I use the line here? Is this where I use my line about how angry I was when I read a certain paragraph of that?
Yes, my favorite line.
I was angrier than a prom night dumpster baby when I read that essentially Budd had written a paper that he believes is the definitive view on hypnosis and its worth. And that paper was also, by the way, edited by Dr. Jacobs. So there we have, and this was peer reviewed in his description of it. And my first question would be, reviewed by whom, and published where, and if published in some major medical or psychological journal, my question would be, what the hell are you people taking an artist and a history professor's papers on hypnosis and its worth for? I mean, that just had my jaw hit the floor. I was like, are you joking? What is that? And And at that point, and this is the question I have for you, Tyler, is, I see this. I see that there are, of course, a lot of people who agree with what we've talked about on the show. Everything, from Dr. Lilienfeld on up. And so the tide is changing, but there are those resistant ones, which there always will be, and we're not kidding ourselves in that respect. But I'm wondering, in lieu of you saying to us, this is something that you're going to have to revisit every so often to keep it in the public, in the pale that they're carrying along, so it's not forgotten. I mean, first of all, I have to say why to that, because I would think once something gets soundly put to bed, it should be just there in bed. I know that doesn't always happen in this field particularly, but the question is, ultimately, what is it going to take? Is it going to take somebody coming out of a hypnosis session with someone remembering some horrible thing that they can't come to grips with and possibly killing themselves? I mean, I would assume something like that could be as damaging as any other psychological aberration that can happen in memory. What is it going to take for people to go, okay, this is a tool we don't need to be fooling with?
You're probably right. It could be, it'll take something really tragic. And I hope it doesn't come to that. I think the odds are against that because we haven't really, at least to my knowledge, had such a terrible thing happen yet. Mm-hmm. But you're right. You're messing with people. And under circumstances that are maybe not optimal. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I think, though, to be honest, that this is not unusual, that an idea can be very valid, but you got to keep beating the drum. And whether it's President Obama running around, trying to get people to listen to his ideas, you have to just repeat and hope at some point it catches. One thing that might be quite fascinating would be that if Carol Rainey is ever able to complete her documentary. I've not seen any of the footage other than what's on her website,
right.
But that might be quite telling. And that's sometimes an example is better than all of our words.
Well, yeah, I mean that would be a good thing to have. But do you think that it's too much on a limb or too dramatic to think about it in the way that I've been thinking about it, which is like I feel like why is this not getting through to people that they're enabling what are probably crimes? Are they crimes? And if they're not crimes, should they be crimes? How do you make them crimes? Like who do you go to in the psych community to say, you know what, it's time to regulate hypnosis? I don't know if we covered this. We probably did the last time you were on. But I mean, who do you go to say this needs to be illegal?
Good question. One problem that apparently is happening here is that a lot of the activities kind of fall between regulatory cracks. And you end up, who's responsible, and you just can't point a finger at any particular spot. And frankly, that's given people a lot of latitude. And I think you can see maybe some of the downside of that. As I said, when I read Carol Rainey's piece, it was stunning. I mean, what I heard was stunning. And so it may not be. I mean, maybe I'm overreacting. But again, let me just put it out there for people. This is not something that I'm really expert on, and we really need to have others weigh in, and I hope that they will. We're getting maybe a little bit of that now, but it's time.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there needs to be some way to put this that's not libelous and slanderous. I mean, I certainly don't want to go down that road, but something that captures the people in this field who are friends with these guys and or had positive interactions with them and all that. I mean, I get that, but that doesn't negate the actual facts that are on the table. Nothing that I've seen in rebuttal to Carol or to Emma Woods has actually negated the facts that they've put on the table. And
this is a very important point.
Yeah. So how do you get people out of the frame of mind of it's he said, she said, and into the frame of mind of it's he said and she documented and backed up with facts? because that's what happened in both cases.
And there are a few people who are beginning to point that out. Other people have said as much. Yeah, I mean, this is, and it's the same thing repeatedly, that apparently data is put out there and there isn't any refutation, in my opinion. Again, I'm not sure what constraints Dr. Jacobs has. I think, Budd can obviously speak freely and has, and it's just not very satisfying. The things that I saw in basically response to Emma on the International Center for Abduction Research website, which is interesting because he can respond when he feels like it, weren't very informative. And we're trying to have it both ways. But it's hard after you pointed out that people just kind of say, yeah, he's a nice guy. As if that excuses anything. Mm. So the only thing I can say is that from my standpoint, one way would be to say, let's then focus on the scientific merits of this and corroborate whatever we can. I feel personally that's very important. And I don't sense that happening either.
Well, you've been on UFO updates, emailing back and forth with people on that message board, and you have maintained a mature and accommodating and friendly demeanor on there, which I'm sure they're not used to. Has that gotten you anywhere? I mean, do you feel as though you're winning over the hearts and minds, maybe, of people who otherwise wouldn't listen to the facts?
No telling, but I have gotten some very, very good questions. And I've tried to be as straightforward and honest with people, knowing that possibly some don't want to hear what I have to say. And I've just laid it out there and, said, this is my opinion and this is where I think we can go. Whether I'm the one that takes them there, in fact, I don't think I ever will be. People seem to at least be listening. And, that's about all you can ask. It's the first time I've never really been on the forum, but I'll just come out and tell you guys that in all of the efforts that I've had combined elsewhere in one day on UFO updates, I got more response than anything else or all the other efforts combined. So I've been, it's been good in that regard. Who knows what tomorrow will bring?
Right. Very good. Well, let's turn it over here to a completely other topic. And Jeff, I'm going to just say take it away because I don't know even how you want to preface this. So take it away.
I don't know either.
Oh, God,
cool. You're just throwing this in my lap, are you?
Well, do you want to preface it by, do you want to tell the origin of this question or not, is one question.
No. No, I'm sleeping pretty well these days. I prefer to keep it that way.
All right.
Well, I'll tell you, Tyler. Essentially, I'll blow it out, and it doesn't matter. I don't think at this point that everybody knows I'm a frickin' space cadet. So what's it matter? Jeremy and I both are experiencers of weird stuff, and neither of us had ever partaken of the hypnosis route. Pretty much everything that I recall just outright. And there are bits that I don't remember, and I'm content not to remember that. And for most of my life, it's been, I could say that there's been a lot of very bizarre things, but you could pretty much slip a lot of it into the UFO phenomena envelope. Up until a certain point, not horribly long ago, when everything seemed to take kind of a right angle turn, and I began to see a man who's probably, I would say he's 7 foot tall, maybe somewhere in there. He's very tall, and wears more or less like a black shroud that's all one piece, no sleeves, no anything like that. He just kind of looks like a black classic ghost with an opening for his face, and I rarely see anything below the bridge of the nose, or above the bridge of the nose, rather. And I've had a couple of kind of weird interactions that when I have talked about them, I seem to get some kind of, I guess I'll call it violent reciprocation, but it feels more like you're being taught to keep your mouth shut until such a time as you can formulate this experience and convey it accurately to a mass audience, which is always the way I've kind of tried to do things. And the other night, I have to preface this by saying I didn't see anyone. I didn't see him. I didn't see I heard this as I'm laying on the couch. There was a discussion which, I mean, to start with, felt like I was having as I woke up, like it was already going on. There was no start point to this. But essentially, it was talking about our brain chemistry, which I know precisely nothing about, and technology. Now, if this rings a bell with you in any conceivable way, or I mention anything, I just want you to jump in and tell me, yeah, this is right or it's wrong, because this is where I lay it out and I go to a scientist like you, does this make any kind of cohesive sense? The gist of this is that we spend, as a culture, a lot of time on the internet. And when you're on the internet, most of your eye movements are rather quick. This was all, to preface all this was all to address a question of anger with me, because I tend to have a lot of anger. Maybe you haven't noticed. But this was being explained in the sense that I work on the net all day. I do the show, and I have to keep up with message boards and all of this data. And so I spend a lot of time on it. 8 hours a day at work, and then practically, another 4 or 5 at home. When your eyes are moving left to right very quickly as you scan pages or you're reading documents or whatever, that is releasing a chemical in your brain. This is what I'm told. And I want to say serotonin or serotonin or something. It wasn't serotonin, but it sounded like that.
Okay.
But essentially what it is a leftover from when I guess we're a much younger species and we're worried about things attacking us. That it immediately triggers in the brain a chemical that is looking for predators. That the darting of the eyes back and forth in the lateral motion is releasing this chemical that is essentially making us defensive, easily agitated, angry. People talk about internet balls and that sort of thing. So I immediately connected that with online interactions that I see across the board, not just with me, but with everyone I know. These tend to be very vicious and cutthroat arguments online about a whole host of topics. And this, too, is connected to something in the way of like an adrenaline disorder of some kind, because it also releases some sort of adrenaline when we're doing this. And this is all said in the sense that we don't even know that this is happening. But this is the reason for so much agitation. As technology has grown, the method of presenting data is still triggering in us a brain chemistry makeup that is causing us to be agitated and in that angered state. Does any of this sound right to you or wrong?
No, it's very interesting. In one sense, we are Stone Age creatures. Our bodies are Stone Age, and here we are in these highly technological environments, totally abnormal for the way that we evolved. And yes, we're doing things. You've heard of a runner's high? Endorphins?
Yes. Right.
You get out there and you start moving or whatever, and you have these wonderful experiences and whatnot. You can alter your chemistry by basically having activities, meditation, among others. The idea, though, of eye movement is very intriguing. And I can't tell you, oh, yeah, I know the chemical basis. I know what you're talking about. But that's a very interesting idea, and I will see if I can find out a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of anxiety builds up, and then the next thing you have is adrenaline, and boy, yeah, that will cook you.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, I mean, the way this was put, immediately when I mentioned this to my wife, she says, well, what about when we read books? I was like, well, I don't know what the difference is between that other than it's a bigger eye movement on a screen than it is a book. And does that matter? I don't know. Is it even the same?
As I told you, when I edit this show and I stare at the screen for too long, my eyes just, as almost a nervous twitch or something, dart back and forth automatically. And you're like, whoa! It's like a knee-jerk type eye reaction. That doesn't happen when I read books. I mean, I think there's something about the light beaming into you or sitting close to this light.
Well, the other thing is the screen flashes. There's a flash rate, and that can affect you. I discount none of this. Okay, I seriously, I discount none of it. I think it's a very intriguing idea. There's other things ladled on top too, and again, take this. I'm as good a psychologist as Budd Hopkins. No, never mind. I'm not going to. Okay, but needless to say, let me just wax poetic here for a moment. One of the things that we were talking about is why don't people get it? And the other thing is that I've heard you mention on this show, or just right now, and before, when you said, I don't want to do this anymore, I have too many things. We're all time challenged. And we're very frustrated because we're putting out what we feel is very good data, and they ain't getting it. It's just not, like, come on, people, I got other things to do. And you get that ladled in, and all that stuff just starts to cook. It's just one more possibility that in addition to anxiety, there's this feeling of a time challenge and a little bit of frustration that, folks that should understand don't. And as a teacher, trust me, you always have those issues. Like, come on, how many times do I have to say this?
Well, I mean, this was the kind of thing that was kind of presented to me. And here's the other part. And I know, well, at least one member of our audience probably isn't going to like this, and I'm sorry, John. But the aspect of video games was also brought up in this conversation. And this was what rattled my wife the most. I was told point blank, you may not notice your behavior after you've been playing a night of, Halo or any number of games that I play with the Xbox, but those around you do. And so I asked my wife, I said, before Christmas, I was playing a hell of a lot of Halo and having a great time with it. I said, did you notice that did I act any different? She goes, oh yeah. You and your son both are very, like, no one's moving fast enough for you, and get out of my way. And you're both easily agitated at that point. And I think a lot of people wrongfully point to that as, well, look at the violence in video games, which I don't discount, but I think, as a 43-year-old male, I know the difference between, going grocery shopping and shooting aliens in Halo. But I can see the effect on young kids, but I'm not seeing that for me. I can see how some people can get incredibly addicted to them and become obsessed with them, and I understand all that. But this, again, related to eye movement, in that when you're playing this game, your eye movement, again, is mostly lateral, and you are looking for a predator. And don't think that part of the attraction to that game is not your species' need to defend and be, and kill, and to do this. And so the end of the discussion was essentially that if this could be somehow substantiated in any meaningful way, that perhaps the way that information is presented on a screen could be acknowledged and then changed to make it just as user-friendly, but maybe not invoke this kind of brain chemistry response. Whether or not that's going to happen, who in the hell knows? I mean, it's all about the almighty dollar and how fast they can put out the next iPhone. But I mean, this is if it ends up getting legs and walking out and making some kind of revolution of the way data is presented, maybe more efficiently than it is now, then fantastic. I mean, that's all about it. But the answer to this was that you can talk about this. And I've never been told that I can talk about this, like, openly. because apparently this is some sort of real problem that could end up with very serious ramifications in our future because of something so incredibly mundane and simple to us that we're not even aware that technology is actually doing this.
Well, that's what I find interesting. I mean, if he mentioned what this chemical is and it's in the English language, then is it a chemical that has been discovered?
Serotonin, yeah.
Well, not serotonin. He said it was something that sounded like serotonin.
Seronin or seronin or it's something with an S, and it sounds like that. And I'm sorry to say, I just don't remember the exact pronunciation of it, but it sounded unfamiliar to me. You know, and
are there other chemicals that sound like serotonin but aren't that you can think of?
Not right offhand, but I'll ask some of the pharmacology people. We have some really expert folks here on in basically pharmacology and medications and human behavior. So I will ask them. Yeah, I mean, serotonin's a basically tryptophan-like, amino acid-like substance and a neurotransmitter. And there are many. There are quite a few of those, and they do have targets and differential effects. And just like you're aware, epinephrine, adrenaline can hype you up, and that's what it's meant to do. And you know, I mean, and those things, if you don't control your levels of these hormones, if you get yourself upset all the time, you will have some very interesting physiological issues.
What is there such a thing as an adrenal disorder?
Oh, many. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I doubt that you have it. Seriously, because
I hope not.
By age 43, you would have the diagnosis if you had something seriously awry. Okay. It would be out there in your record. You would know. Now, I think you have the same thing we all have: is too much to do, not enough time to do it. You know, feelings that people aren't all pulling on the rope the right way. You know,
well, I will say this, and I don't mind saying this on the show either. I do have panic attacks. I do have an unusually, and Jeremy can attest to this, an unusually high pressure job that you know is not only it's of course I work in the art field, so it's like be creative on demand, that type of thing.
Oh yeah, that's pressure.
Yeah, well, and then it's double pressure because the deadlines are borderline absurd for what is expected, but I always meet them. So it's like I will do what it takes to get the job done. And I've had panic attacks that have been really debilitating to the point that at work, and the oddest part about it to me is that I'm not engaged in a particularly high stress. I've just come out of a high stress job that I was gravely concerned would not go out on time. And this is all very time sensitive stuff. And I'm just talking to a coworker. And all of a sudden, it just felt like I had no legs. And I began to walk, and everything just kind of felt disoriented and a little dizzy. And my heart started pounding. And I had to literally lay in the back room. I had to lay down on a couch in a meeting room and just calm down. Yeah. My coworker said that my face and my hands looked like they were made of plastic because I didn't even look real. I was so pale. And I was fine, but ever since then, I mean, generally when something happens like that, your first thought is, am I having a stroke? Am I having a heart attack? Yeah. What is going on? And then you fear that feeling again. And so you bring another one on. That's how anxiety works. And I've got it under control now, but this discussion with this whatever, talking about computer usage, game usage, eye movement, and all of that is said that essentially that's what that is for me. That's my reaction to it, is that I have panic attacks that seemingly come out of nowhere. And at times I do. I mean, I could be doing anything, and all of a sudden it just hits, and I have no idea why. I have been medically examined. I do not have a mitral valve prolapse. I don't have that because that was checked. which can produce a similar effect as a panic attack. It is simple anxiety. And this was said to be the reason for it. So if that's the case, I refer back to a show that we did with, am I right, Jeremy? Maggie Jackson, right?
Uh-huh.
Where she talked about the need to unplug. And so my family is now on quarantine from the machine for except a half an hour a night. And that's it. So when we come home, it's unplug time. And we're going to do this for the next couple of weeks and see how everybody feels, if there's a noticeable difference. But I'd be very curious to see what your chemist and pharmaceutical guys come up with in the way of...
Yeah, I'll ask them, but I think the idea of unplugging sounds brilliant.
Yeah.
It's easy, and you can give it a try, and you have somebody, your wife, who can give you an assessment of how she perceives things. Mm-hmm. Because we can't really perceive ourselves that accurately. You need somebody close to you who really knows you, who say, knock it off, or what is your problem?
Yeah. Personally, to me, this was very strange because this kind of thing has never been outwardly said before to me, and I'm not sure what really brought it on. I mean, usually...
yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
We had the after chat discussion about your anger, and then the dude was like,
"Well, yeah,
you really want to know what makes you angry?"
There's that, but I don't know that was necessarily something that I personally focused on for the. I mean, we had the discussion. That was pretty much it. Whereas a lot of other stuff has been like.
Clearly, they're listening to Paratopia, whoever these ethereal beings are. Huge fans of the show.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't the level of focus that normally has to accompany something happening, which is a little off to me. But even still, that's what it was. So you don't find this out of the ordinary for eye movement to have that kind of effect, which is interesting.
Well, I think it's something within the realm of possibility. I do know there are people studying eye movements in relation to web pages to see where people look and how long they dwell and such things as that. So there must be somewhere, some knowledge on what some of the effects of these things are. I don't know, but I would think that the military would have quite a bit of knowledge because they have people, watching screens to follow Osama bin Laden or somebody for long periods of time and try to blow them up. And so they probably have a good feel for what kind of fatigue can set in, what kind of psychology that involves. But I doubt that's ever going to be literature that I could get to.
Mm. Well, what do when we talk about, and we see this warning all the time on everything from 3D movies to video games. We see this, if you're epileptic, the flashing or the flashing of colors and all of that kind of thing. Can you, because I find this curious in the sense of also visual hallucinations have been associated with flashing lights, flashing patterns and colors and that sort of thing. Do you know what kind of triggers that kind of response? I mean, you had mentioned earlier that you can get very physical responses from some of these outside stimulus that you can actually feel without question. How does that work with the brain?
I can't tell you the exact mechanism, but I understand that is a fact that epileptic in some people seizures can be induced by these conditions, such as flashing lights. But I don't know what exactly that mechanism is. I'm sure it's known. And again, I can ask our pharmacology guy if he happens to know and get back to you. But that's something I just don't happen to have right on the top of my head. Yeah,
I'll be curious about that.
In terms of asking around and asking colleagues, are you able to ask people who are actually doing these eye movement studies? I mean, do you know people? I mean, we're ignorant of this, I guess, and so we're just assuming, well, either Tyler will know or he'll know somebody who knows. Is that a dumb assumption?
No, I don't know someone directly, but this is exactly what you do, is you run down to Hall, and I'll talk to a colleague named Laszlo Karashin, who happens to be an MD, teaches our pharmacology class, teaches the whole thing. And I'll start with him. And then he might give me a hint as to somebody, and then I'll just keep following that thread. But it's very interesting how balkanized siloized, however you want to put it, academic research is, that it can be really hard to know right off the top of your head who at my own institution might be a real font of knowledge. And so you just have to start asking. It's one of the reasons that interdisciplinary research can be so challenging. We don't talk to each other. We get into our own little worlds and we stay there. And it's much more comfortable that way. Okay? I mean, I don't have people give me a bad time about, this or that in my own little universe. I can control everything. When I come out and start talking about abduction research, mercy. Oh, my God. Katie bar the door. Here they come.
Have you talked to them about that?
Some. And some people think, oh, yeah, that's interesting. But they're really not going to pursue this. And the reason is because they'll look at it and say, not worth my time.
Right.
See you, move on.
Well, why do you look at it and say it is worth your time?
Just something that's interesting. And for me, with the whole UFO thing, I started at about age 12. And I happened to see Frank Edwards, the author, journalist, on TV talking on the Mike Douglas show. We had it in our area way back then, about his book, Flying Saucers, Serious Business. And I could afford that. It was like a 50-cent paperback. And I got that, and then I got everything I could get my hands on for the next 3 years until the Condon Report came out, and that pretty much ended it. For a long time. The other thing was I went through a socialization process about what is and what is not acceptable in science, and UFOs, flying saucers, all that stuff became unacceptable. And so we didn't discuss it. I let it drop.
Well, it's funny. I see you on UFO Updates. I think the latest thing that you had written in response to somebody there about looking at Hopkins and Jacobs' research is that you wouldn't do it on the grounds that they may have shared the names of their clientele who should have remained anonymous?
Yeah, that's actually not on the updates.
Oh, it isn't?
That was a note to you guys, an email, on top of an updates query. And I just wanted to make everybody aware. I think Gary Hayden had said that I stand ready, and that's fine. I'm not quibbling with his statement, but I wanted everybody to be clear that I do have constraints, and that one of them is that if I get human subjects or samples from human subjects, if I do research that involves either, the IRB, the Institutional Review Board protocols, must be followed exactly, and they will be. And there are also other limitations that I'm not going to take a piece of junk, something I know will not yield me anything, and study that. I mean, I just have to say that there are some limits. But the problem that I have with Mr. Hopkins and David Jacobs is, and just realize it with some of these questions on UFO updates, is that I really cannot accept samples from them. And the reason is because I don't know what's going on. There are all these accusations out there. I don't know what the truth of them is. Did Dr. Jacobs do research or not? Okay, whatever. That's the other university's decision. I know how it works here, and I know how I work. And I can't get involved with people like that. I'm sorry. And I hope that people don't think that I'm being horrible or whatever, and I don't know what the truth is, and that means that I just have to let that go. That, I might be able to say, yeah, take this over here or whatever, but I'm not going to risk my situation, standing, reputation, or whatever, working with people that have this kind of cloud hanging over them. Perhaps they'll dispel it. I hope so, but I ain't going there. And that's the bottom line. Anyway, that was not on UFO updates. That was just out to some people I thought would be interested, just so that everybody knew that I can't just pick it up and do it. I can't just sequence the stuff. I'm not allowed to use the funding that I have for projects that really weren't covered for it, and that there will be other considerations as well. So I know that's probably a longer answer than you wanted, but them's the facts.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad I posted that on our message board, so I'll take that down immediately.
You know what? It's fine.
It's too late. I just took it down. I thought that you were saying that was on UFO updates.
No.
That was private. Whoops.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I think we're trying to be clear that I don't know what the facts are, but I know how research would be defined at our institute and how I would do things, and I just have to say I would decline to take samples from these guys after thinking about it. I just can't. You can't do this halfway. And I have heard accusations of impropriety, and I don't know, and I'm not going to find out.
Right.
And you can't turn a blind eye. Otherwise, you're violating your ethics. And then what do you have? So I'm not doing it.
Well, I know you did definitely speak on UFO updates about the alleged Starchild skull.
Yes.
Is that something that you could do something with?
Yes, it is. I haven't been asked. And it's not polite of me to try to invite myself into somebody else's work, but I have communicated with Mr. Pi, and when he first said he was sequencing, I sent him an email saying, "Oh, when are you going to release the sequence? Are you going to wait till the whole thing's done? Could I have some?" Because the whole genome will take a long period of time, and I thought maybe he was going to do things piecemeal. He indicated that he was not, and I understand and support that decision. Yeah, that would be something that I could conceivably help with. I mean, we'd have to go through, and the funding would be an issue and all the other ancillary concerns, but I believe they could be worked out. What he has, I don't know, but what I love is his approach, and I think it's gutsy. How much easier to sit there and be the misunderstood genius and go on the lecture circuit forever and never answer the question. Just keep stirring the pot. He chose.
Yeah, I can see what Jeff's answer to this is going to be, which is that he's just going to keep doing this until he finds the person that's going to say what he wants them to say.
Oh, that's cool, because that's easy to refute if it comes to that. And again, I haven't seen the data, don't know what he has, but at some point he'll have to produce the sequence, and he'll have to tell people under what circumstances that was analyzed with the computer and how he's getting his matches or lack of the matches. The data is going to tell all, okay? And there won't be anywhere to hide at the end of that. There will not be anywhere to hide. The data will make or break his hypothesis.
Based on what you do know about the Starchild skull, do you think that there is an incorrupted or incorruptible sample that can be used? Or do you think that that's always going to end up being a problem? Because hasn't that been a problem in the past, that the sample there's something about it that's not quite right or not quite usable?
When you have the old samples, it's always an issue. Data quality is always an issue. It could be that they will not be able to basically complete the whole genome or get as many passes through as they would like for high-quality data. I think there should be something there. I even suggested to him that there might be ways to get some data that would not depend on the actual sequencing, and those are just thoughts, and it wouldn't be as labor intensive and whatnot. But the one thing to keep in mind is that last year, Svante Pääbo's lab actually presented the entire genomic sequence of reasonable quality of Neanderthals. And I forget how old they were, but they were probably quite a bit older than Mr. Pi's skull by a large margin. I shouldn't say Mr. Pi's skull, the Starchild skull, by a large margin. And so, and that was considered technically impossible not too long ago. And Pääbo's group has solved this and gotten data. And they are not without controversy. Okay, I mean, it's interesting how this will go. And that story may change, but they got sequence data from thousands upon thousands of year-old samples.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard from anyone in ufology or just even listeners since our show or since the article?
The only thing that I've gotten has been on UFO updates, and that's after some postings that I made, and those have been basically fine. I mean, you can look and see what's there, but no. What you're looking at here is a pariah, okay, in its purest form, and I often just to give you a sense of perspective, when I have reached out to people who have had samples, roughly 50, or I thought had samples or could use help, roughly 50% of them clam up and shut up, and I never hear back from them. And a couple of others have actually been very anxious to have even just some simple things that I could do. But by and large, I think it's 50% or 60%, nothing. It's like I didn't even send them the email. So, interesting. No, the large lights of ufology, they don't know who I am. And, that's not unexpected. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that I don't actually do any UFO research except little projects for a few people here and there, none of which have been published, and all of that data is owned by those guys. So I'm not really, in any sense of the word, a UFO researcher. So there's no reason for them really to work with me. In fact, there's every reason to fear me.
I was just kind of hoping one of these puppy mill abductee women would get back to you about...
Oh, yeah, thank you so much.
About their baby cells.
I can't help them, okay?
So you hear that, ladies? No scraping your vagina for Dr. Kokjohn. It's not going to happen.
Totally editing that out.
Oh, God, I hope so. After the IRB approves it, maybe, but I don't think I can get a lot of this stuff through the IRB. Simple DNA analyses, samples, whatnot, like forensic stuff, yes. But the rest of it, I don't think so.
Well,
and that's
I'm sorry.
I was trying to tell the person, Mr. Galinas, who's asked some excellent questions on UFO updates, exactly where I stood and why was I badgering these people? They earned it. And why, don't I do it? Well, one thing is I'm really not in a position to, and the other is I don't want to do it. Okay? I mean, I just went out there and said, man, I know what this is. And no, it's their mess. Right. They need to come forward and pony up with the data.
Well, I would have to say, I was on UFO updates for a little while, and I have to say, your discussions in there, and I know you're a doctor and all, so I'm wondering, can you tell me what pharmaceutical, substance that you're consuming to be able to talk in that place in such a calm, mannerly way? Because I would like you to make me a script for it.
Well, because that's not always the case.
Because I'll tell you, for a while I did nothing but read that, and it seems to be just like and it's not, I'm not digging at UFO updates because it's just the same as anywhere else. It is by and large been this very I don't know, it's the Colosseum, it's gladiator battle back and forth of wills, beliefs, and everything else. It's just like every place else on the net that discusses this, and you walk in there and it's like the whole tone changes. So congratulations on achieving those small feat. I'll tell you that, because I've not ever seen that done. Ever.
Yeah, okay. We'll see how long it lasts. I hope it does. Yeah, and I hope that there's probably a novelty aspect that people don't quite know what to make of me. And that's why I've tried to just lay it out there so there aren't revelations that come out later as best I can. But tomorrow could be very different. And that's the way it goes. And the other thing is that at any time I can just push the delete button and say, I'm done. I'd rather not, but I can. And if people get to the point where it's all about, ad hominem attacks, I will say, okay, have fun.
Right.
See ya.
Right. Well, that's why you're a respected doctor and professor, and we're podcast hosts.
Well, okay, but I have not always had such a great record. Also, you've also have seen here a learning process. And one of the things that I learned was what works in the scientific community doesn't always translate to the real world. And in particular, when I was first criticizing very, very heavily UFO hunters, I got too into sarcasm and other, just trying to be funny kind of stuff, and the message got lost. Right. A lot of people go, "Oh, ha ha ha, that was a good one," but that's not what I wanted. And the thing was that really got lost was that, despite its scientific faults, which were many, in my opinion, UFO hunters did have some of the right ideas. And one of the things was on-the-ground investigations and rolling over the data. I like that. I didn't like how they actually did some of the stuff, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, if you talk to my colleagues, that's all we do is argue.
Really?
And so this is normal. But what I did learn is that you can get that message lost so fast. And I wish that I had not said those things, but they're out there, or the way that, I'm not taking back what I said, but the way that I said it, I would definitely improve that.
Well, and I'm definitely not sending you my book because it's all sarcasm.
You got it. I need other perspectives, but one of the things that was very interesting is I posted those critiques on the UFO magazine site, and they were kind enough to not change a single word, and they stayed there the whole time. I was never banned. I was never told to shut up. Nothing. They left them up there, and that says volumes to me about what Bill Burns holds dear or believes, however you want to put it. Okay, again, I'm not a fan of how the show was done, but I sure respect that. And not every place does that, as you know.
Yeah, I got to say, Nancy, Leslie Gunter and Nancy Burns run the forum, and they're really, they've got a guy in there who's, in my eyes is sort of a cyber stalker almost, just constantly trying to get them for some perceived screw over, one-time screw over, maybe a year ago. And so it's like his life's mission to sort of needle them, and they won't get rid of him because they feel like, they're heavy into the freedom of speech of the message board, even if it's a detriment to them or their image.
You got to respect that.
Yeah.
It's just so tempting not to do that, and I can even see how it might even have to happen. When I first put up the first post there, I thought this is going to last 1/10 of 1 second, and totally wrong. And that was the first time that I was wrong many times about what people would do and react to. And that should tell you something, too, that scientists make plenty of errors, okay? And like a lot of people, maybe they don't always like to admit them, but you got to see them and grapple with them and, be forthright. And, that's the difference, is that instead of making excuses with data or whatever, you have to come back and say, that didn't happen. Now, why didn't it happen? And be honest with yourself. That's tough. That is a tough thing to do.
Hey, can I ask a question, Tyler?
Yeah.
What are you in this field for? Why are you even engaging this at all? Because
it's fun and it's fascinating. And I sit there and I think, I realize there are probably, is Jacques Vallée, I read his book that, what was it, where he just kind of described what all was going on. And I agree, there are so many hands stirring this pot that it's just really intriguing, who is doing what and why. And in the whole thing, is there a signal? And I don't think that we have completely exhausted all the possibilities. And as I think Jeremy was saying, my God, we don't even know our own minds,
right? Let
alone the minds of aliens or technology that could be, who knows how many thousands of years advanced. So I just don't put any limits on anything. I'm one that wants to root it out as best I can.
Have you ever had any kind of experience at all with anything that you would deem off the chart weird?
You've seen the video alien abductees in pregnancy.
Uh-huh.
Where do you think the dude with the dark hood came from?
Okay.
He's not 7 feet tall.
Right.
It's something that scares me and always has the kid. I don't know if that means anything. I haven't had really experiences like that. I have had one very brief UFO experience, a light that I couldn't explain. But it was very quick, and you know how it is. It could be, maybe not, or whatever. But that's the sum total of it.
So wait, are you saying that you saw a 7-foot-tall being?
No.
Oh.
No. But ever since I've been a kid, that image has bugged me. Okay? Make of it what you will. Maybe there's something, you know, like Jeff, one day I'll wake up and I'll realize what's going on. But as he was telling me the experience, I'm thinking, you know, wow, isn't that interesting? Maybe, people just have the same images. I don't know. I don't know what it means.
Well, I mean, I have to be honest and say that I really questioned that whole change of what the experience presented in that way, because I don't. I mean, back when all of this first came to my own realization of it, it was always them, or I referred to this enigma as them, and now I don't. I just refer to it as the it or the other. It's like a singular thing to me. I don't necessarily mean that's what I believe, that it's a singular thing, but that's how I refer to it now. And I used to say this guy or this man, excuse me, and I still do to some point, but I almost want to call it an it. And here's two really interesting things. I mean, one of them being that I seriously questioned whether or not it even happened the first time that I interacted with this thing. And then we had somebody on the show who I'd never spoken to in my life, and frankly, our experiences seem pretty different. Her outlook on it seems a lot different than my outlook on it. So it's not somebody I really related to all that much. But yet she made a point to tell us that her experiences had changed, and now she sees this black hooded being. And since then, I've had half a dozen people say the same thing. I mean, Jeremy's met people who have related similar looking figures. And here's something.
People who don't know Jeff or listen to the show.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's all this independent stuff that just comes out of nowhere. And here's another really interesting thing that I found out. We had Dr. Raymond Moody on the show, which you probably heard. And he started talking about the psychomantium, which is the mirror gazing type of thing that you do in a low light situation. And there's supposed to be all sorts of interesting, potentially quote unquote real or visuals that you get with that. And when I read a lot more on the net about what is some of the most common visuals, and then also looking at his work that he did a case study on, one of the most popular things people saw were black hooded beings.
How about that? I had no idea.
And not only one, but 2 or 3 filing out of a mirror. I don't even know if I regulate this to. Well, I haven't really put the alien abduction experience anymore. Is it even related to UFOs? I mean, as dumb as that sounds, but I really question whether or not it's even related at all.
No, that's a fundamental question that has yet to be really established.
Yeah.
There are so many basics in the field that have yet to be nailed down.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet, as your video demonstrated with the cards, there's been all of this foundation built on top of essentially nothing. And to me, I mean, I'm sure that there's going to be people in this audience that go, what are you talking about? It's fundamentally connected. People see a flying saucer, or they see an orb, or they see something. They've got missing time. And so therefore later on it leaks out that they've had this experience with aliens, or they've had it all their life. And to me, at least for the past 12 to 15 years, I've looked at the UFO phenomena as a symptom of something else, that it's not a device unto its own, that it's actually it's symptomatic of something bigger. Just like ghosts are probably a symptom of something bigger. Whether or not they're connected, there's certainly parallels there, but whether or not they're joined at the hip as the same thing, I don't know. But I find it really interesting that this hooded guy keeps coming up, and the descriptions of him are odd because the color blue comes up as well, like very, very dark blue.
Huh.
I can't put it off as I dreamed it, or it's not. There's nothing real. I mean, when I did speak of it in depth on the show one time, but thankfully before it ever went out, I got whipped. I got whipped. I mean, I looked like I'd been, strapped to a pole and whipped, and my back was a mess for at least a week.
Holy cow!
So that says, I told you to keep your mouth shut. You don't listen.
Have you seen those photos, Tyler?
No.
No? Oh.
No.
I'll send those to you. I mean, it's interesting because it's all over his back. So as I had said on that show, and I don't remember if this went out because I know we had to re-edit everything a couple of times.
Yeah.
The fact is, at that point, either Jeff and his wife or someone else are hoaxing me because they were showing me this before we even thought about doing a show about it, or this happened. Like either unless he got into a fight with a Wolverine or a Bobcat, like these are our options because it's not in a place where he could reach, with a knife or scrape his back up.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, I mean, the problem is that I have to sit all day. And I sit in a form-fitted chair, and it's not exactly comfortable. So I mean it burned. It was sticky on my T-shirt. It was constantly getting pulled because they were. I mean, one of them I have a scar from. It was deep, and apparently I should have had stitches in it. But I'm not a big fan of that kind of pain. I mean, like every human, I like to be. Me and Jeremy were talking about this earlier. It's like some desire to be angry at something because you feel like you identify with anger or with pain or something like that. Physical pain I ain't into, and that was definitely not pleasant at all.
So was it several spots across the back?
No, it's pretty much the whole back.
The whole back, okay.
Pretty much.
There is a condition called, I was thinking shingles because I'm a microbiologist, but that never, or I think almost never, will cross the center line, although it can be stripy and it can be very painful. But sometimes we don't know what brings that on, and so maybe just psychic stress or upset. But this doesn't sound like...
No, I mean, in fact, I woke up, and it wasn't until I got about... Well, I mean, here's the precursor to that, and I'm sure this is fine to say, that, as I think I've said it before, in the middle of the night, now I'm not going to... Let's put the cards on the table. My beagle sleeps with us in the bed, but she does not come up between us because, we've only got... it's a double bed, but it's not big enough. And she tends to be, here's another card on the table. She tends to be very dreamy, and Jeremy can attest to that because he's seen her dream laying on the floor. She'll gallop and all of that sort of thing.
Sure.
And I have had occasion where my wife is downstairs on the couch watching a movie, and I go up to bed. And of course, Indiana, my dog, will follow me up, and she'll get in bed and she gets up against me. They feel a need to be up against you, but usually it's with their back to you, not with their feet on you.
Yes.
And so that's what she does. And in the middle of the night, she starts having a dream and she starts galloping. And I immediately know because it jars me awake. At this point, the only way that this could have happened with her scratching me, and I can't imagine that this would be any different than any other time that I wouldn't wake up and go, knock it off, is that I'm laying on my stomach and I am awakened by essentially what feels like, here's the weird, little hands, very tiny hands, slapping me on the back, all over my back, and not even particularly hard.
Yeah.
But they were definitely fleshy and not dog paw. I mean, they were you got this kind of thing going on, and I couldn't get away from it. It's like I couldn't. It wasn't that I was paralyzed, but I just couldn't get myself into such a state as to move. And when I woke up in the morning, it was burning. I mean, it didn't even hurt like a cut. It burned like I was on fire. Very severe sunburn. And when I went downstairs, I said, Lisa, look at my back. And I lifted my shirt up, and she just freaked and started telling me, you got to drop out of this. You can't be doing this anymore. Because her and I both have had some pretty horrendous marks before associated with this. And she says that every time that I get very involved in it is when these things tend to happen. And so when she put the mirror up to my back, I was like, there's no way the dog did that, right? She's like, no. I mean, it's just, it was pretty horrendous. So all I know is that parts of it you can discuss and parts of it are not for mass consumption. And that's it. So, this whole notion of the net and how we read things, that's been really one of the few things that I could say, I'm supposed to talk to someone about this. And Jeremy said, well, we're having Tyler on, so you can ask him about it. So there it is.
This is interesting. I wish I had some kind of, deep insight here. It's kind of stunning. I don't know.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what your guys have to say about it. And, and at that point, I don't, where the hell do you go from there? I mean, if that is the case, then, I God knows you're not going to turn Microsoft and Apple around to coming up with some kind of new way to read. But
you never know. As soon as they can upgrade and sell you a new upgrade, they'll do it.
That's true. But maybe it's just the notion of unplugging from it, and
or trying to limit taking a break. I know that's not going to happen when you're under pressure. I catch myself that there are times I stare at the computer screen for 8 hours.
Oh yeah.
And, oh my God. And you're just so fed up with it. But it's easy to say take a break, but sometimes you can't. And maybe that's the price.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, Tyler, I wanted to ask you, working with Alzheimer's disease, I guess maybe an initial question is, do you have any belief about what a human is beyond the body, or are you a materialist?
I guess I'd have to say I don't know anything that makes me not a materialist, but I haven't really delved into this much at all. I just don't know much about anything other. Talking about quantum entanglements, that kind of thing, don't know.
Well, just even in terms of, what does it do for you to work with Alzheimer's? And, we all think that we are our thoughts, and we are. But then you've got this dementia that scrambles all of that. Does that make it impossible for you to believe that surface piece of us at least would go on in some eternal way, become a ghost, become a go to the light, Raymond Moody type of experience?
No, I wouldn't necessarily say you have to equate the two. That we can see how you're here when the brain doesn't function properly. All manner of things can happen. Just a little bit of oxygen deprivation, and you can have all kinds of funny things. So no, I don't necessarily link them, but I haven't really spent a lot of time pondering it either. So I don't really know.
And do you have any idea? I remember reading way back when, probably in the Holographic Universe or a book like that, that even though on some level it appears that the brain has compartmentalized aspects of memory, that's not really true. That if you take out one piece of the brain of the mouse, it'll still know how to run the maze. If you put it back in and take out the next piece, it'll still know how to run the maze, et cetera, sort of making the point that there is this holographic memory. Is that true? And if so, how does dementia happen?
Well, interesting. I think that we could probably take a piece out of the mouse brain in such a way that it couldn't run anything at the end of that. That we could interrupt the process, and we know roughly where some of these things are. But in terms of it being a distributed system, the brain being a distributed system, thought being or higher order functions being in many places, mapping all over, yes, they do. And what happens with Alzheimer's at the very earliest stages is tonight you will go to bed, and your hippocampus, kind of in the center of your brain, will map memories of the day into various parts of the cortex. That's its role. And Alzheimer's people lose that short-term mapping ability, and you got to basically have that in order to remember what happened to you 5 minutes ago, for example. That's the first thing they lose. But they retain, it's kind of interesting, they can remember stuff that happened to them 75 years ago as a child with complete clarity. And so they don't have a handle on today, but man, do they remember their yesterdays for a while, and then it progresses.
Well,
So
I don't
it's
know.
hard.
I mean, my grandmother doesn't have Alzheimer's, but she had a bunch of heart attacks and then I think a stroke, and so dementia definitely for sure. To where she doesn't just remember things from her childhood. She actually most of the time thinks she still is a child, and she'll go from asking about her parents to asking about where's Ken, her husband who died. So she's all over the map in terms of who she thinks she is in time. What is that? How does that happen? Do you have any idea? Do we know how that happens?
Yeah, we probably can give you a rough idea, and that is the stroke part is very important, and then they'll lose basically function of the brain. And one of the things that it does, it resembles the true senile dementia, where she's not remembering so much accurately who she is now, but has all these memories coming back. It's similar to classic dementia. And those things, the classic dementia, really kind of begin in the hippocampus and radiate outwards. There are other neurologic syndromes, though, related to vascular health, and the heart attacks, too, probably took a toll. And if you can't keep the brain oxygenated, even if everything is there, it's not going to function right. And so it's one of the most energy and oxygen hungry parts of the body. And the second you interfere with that, cognition really suffers, and quickly, very quickly. So I'm going to guess that what you have are global effects from basically poor circulation, specific deficits related to which part of the brain was specifically blocked by the stroke. And the neurologist will actually be able to map that out. They probably have it somewhere in your mom's or grandmother's chart.
Well, and isn't that a bunch of meditation, too? A bunch of meditation exercises, breathing exercises to bring on a certain quote-unquote state of consciousness, which is actually a state of biology, really.
You can, and you can change what the brain waves are doing. I guess a really adept person can bring on some of these states almost at will with a great deal of practice. But anyway, that's my guess is that you have a combination of bad effects with your grandmother. And,
so do you have any evidence that there is a person that is trapped in time going through this who can't communicate with us, or is that the person? Like, could she come out of it at one point and go, oh my God, this is so tiring, you don't understand. One minute I'm a kid, the next minute I'm an old woman, help. Or is that not possible because she is that person, all those fluctuations are her?
We can never say not possible, but you can go back and talk in terms of probabilities. And basically what that means is that a neurologist would look back and say, you know what, she's probably this is the best you're going to expect, and she'll have a few more years or whatnot. But coming back, releasing the trapped person, unlikely. But I can tell you a case way back when I was a kid, someone about my age went to college, and they had a pill party where everybody threw pills into a big container, and they took the drugs. and he went into a coma. And they said to his father, who was a very big-name businessman and a friend of my dad, they said, you know what, we're going to have to pull the plug on him because he's brain dead and he's never coming back. He was 19 years old. And his dad said, no, I know. He knows I'm here. And I tell a joke and his eyes brighten up. And he knows, and they're going, yeah, come on, you're deluding yourself. Now, this is 1973 or 4. And he insisted he would not give up on his kid. That guy came back. He had a lot of deficits. The last time I saw him, he was in a wheelchair, but he was back cognitively. He returned. The neurologist said he was gone. So that's why Karen Ann Quinlan, I don't know if you guys remember, that's probably before you were born. But it's really hard to say, oh, no way, we're done. There are a lot of things that we do not know and things that can happen. So, I don't say, we never say never. Mm-hmm. But probabilities, this is the thing. The probabilities do mount up. It's the same thing as the alien abduction hypothesis, that if you want to parse the data and argue about it, if you don't have the killer positive data, you could do that forever if you're so inclined, and never quite get to the bottom of it. There's always that shadow of doubt. But then again, now let me argue the other side. With the UFO story, I'll come back and say, yeah, I know there are a lot of things here that don't work, but there's still that interesting core of cases that cannot be dismissed nor easily explained. What are they? And we'd like to hang on to hope there. So I guess it's just a balancing act. You can't go too far. Different when lives are in the balance. When it's your grandmother or your son or whatever, you're not so inclined to say, okay, yeah, that's it. See ya.
Right.
I hope.
Yeah.
Jared, when you talk about that trapped person, and maybe Tyler, you can tell me what this is. I mean, my grandfather died. He died of pneumonia, but he had Parkinson's, and he had all kinds of delusions. Obviously, both visual and mental delusions. And I remember seeing him in the hospital, and he was a crane operator for his whole life, practically. And he actually thought in the hospital he was on a job site. And I remember him, this man who'd never yelled at me in his life, yelling me to get out of the way because I was going to get hit by a beam and that sort of thing, I mean, he was literally there.
Yeah.
And I was just so completely destroyed when I came home. I thought, my grandfather is gone. I mean, he is gone. I'm never going to be able to talk to that man again. And the doctor told my mom, he needs to go home. He needs to go home. And when he gets home, you will notice a change. And I will never forget coming through the dining room into the living room and seeing him sitting in his chair. And I said, hi, Pop. And he said, hey, buddy. And it was just like he was there. It was my Pop that I knew. And I actually sat down and asked him, I said, do you remember being in the hospital? And he said, yes, I do. I said, do you remember what you were saying? Because you yelled at me. And he got kind of choked up about it. He's like, I know what I said. All I can tell you is that I felt myself inside knowing I'm not right.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to figure out how that makes any kind of sense, because the way he kind of conveyed it was he was in there, but the body and the foremind is doing something completely different. But he's back there going, I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe this is not real. He's like, I knew this was wrong. This is not reality. But yet he couldn't stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. Parkinson's does have a dementing quality. And the lesions are different than Alzheimer's, but dementia is rather similar. And there actually are several different types of dementia, and they have different biochemical bases. But the scrambling and the blocking, the trapped man syndrome or whatever, that I would think that would be consistent in getting back in his own environment where he's more secure. And you saw the difference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I remember my dad, before he died, had a situation where he was in the hospital and he I went in to see him in intensive care, and he told me to call the police, and that they were trying to kill him. And I said, "Oh, okay, Dad, okay, I'll do it." "No, I mean it." And he was just dead serious. He was so agitated. But they told me that was painkiller, morphine.
Wow.
That was doing this to him. But he came out of it. When he got out and he came back, he was fine. And I don't think he recalled any of it.
Huh.
Interestingly enough, I never really pushed him on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jeremy, if you disagree with this, you tell me. But when Jeremy and I actually took the mushroom plunge, I had that feeling like out here is crazy, but I'm in there going, oh, I can't stop laughing. What is? And meanwhile, I'm, but inside I'm going, stop it. What is going on? But my outward and part of my, I guess my mental facilities were just engrossed in something completely, completely separate from that. And the thing that actually bothered me about that part of it was that eventually I did lose the inside of me. I lost that part of me going, you know what this is. This is all, you're cool. Everything's fine. Just calm down. Take a deep breath. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
That became lost at a certain point where what I called imagination or an imaginative place became all that there was. Like I didn't know. And then when my foot fell asleep, it jarred me out of it. And that's when the me inside came back and went, oh my God. I was gone. I was someplace else. And I wonder, Jeremy and I both described it as like induced psychosis. And I have to wonder if that's not what the schizophrenic, the Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, are they all in there? And if that's the case, then, that is a horrifying prospect that anyone should have to endure that.
It is. It is.
I can't, that my mom used to say to me about the man across the street, there's nothing so horrifying as what you can't possibly escape because it's in you.
That's a good point.
But you think that does happen, that they are in there at some point, but we just can't, technologically, medicinally, we can't reach them.
I think in some instances, for the end stage of Alzheimer's, the damage is so severe, I don't think there's any function there anymore. I really, my best guess is looking at the brain section, that'll give you quite a interesting thing. You're looking at a bit of gray and white matter from a person that maybe held their thoughts about their childhood or whatever right there, and you're pondering that. But you see some of them, and they are hemorrhaged, and when you look at them under the microscope, they are just shot through with pathology everywhere. And you can see that the neurons are not only damaged, they're dying and dead in those people. It's just destruction and inflammation like you can't imagine.
Does the pineal gland look discernibly different in any of these people?
I've never even looked. I could ask the guy that runs the lab. So I work at Banner Sun Health Research Institute as an adjunct. I'm not paid there. We have grants, and that's how they defray the time that I leave the university to go there and work. Mm-hmm. But he is an MD. And so he's had lots of experiences taking the brains apart and whatnot. And he one time told me that it's quite interesting when you have someone who's an alcoholic, a long-term alcoholic, they have the greatest vessels, the healthiest vessels you've ever seen, blood vessels, but the brain's shot. You're not going to win on this. But so he's seen it and has really had his hands in there, so to speak. And I can ask him what his experience has been.
Do you need us to jot down all of our questions for your colleagues?
Yeah. Well, look at the epileptic seizures and lights and serotonin and something similar, and the locked-in syndrome. That there really is a real thing.
Yeah.
In basically not in the face of classic pathology, but there is something where these people cannot communicate. It's really there. And there are other dementias. One is called FTD, frontal temporal dementia. And these people kind of lose their normal sort of sense of social control. And so they do outrageous things. And I've never heard if they're aware of it, but if they are, they can't stop it.
Do any of them do positive outrageous things, or is it always destructive?
That's a very good question. You know, you might find out that some of these people become quite creative. I don't know that for a fact, but sometimes release of inhibition is actually a good thing creatively. I think that's why you find out like a lot of writers and artists drink, because it gives them, you know, they just kind of let go. Otherwise, you're going to edit yourself to death.
Or get into bathtubs on film.
What?
Or get into bathtubs with family friends on film.
Oh, how dare
yeah, and then we can put that all on YouTube and get all the input. We'll call it input from that point on.
Yeah, I think we should stay away from that word input.
In any event, it was good having you here. Well, yeah, I mean, Tyler, we wanted to have you on for a half hour. Now you've given us an entire episode, so
well,
thank you.
Thank you.
You know, it's kind of interesting that there's really not much to say from my standpoint about what Budd had to say. Mm-hmm. And you know, okay, I think we're done from that standpoint.
Right.
Yeah.
He did not offer much, and I don't expect much, to be honest. And I know those guys would like it to be about anything but what they did. And I guess if I was in that situation, I'd be trying to get dead guys to post how great I was on the web. Did I not understand that John Mack has a testimonial to him on the web, or am I in error?
Yeah, I think it's yeah. I don't know that he wrote it
I hope not.
Today. But,
oh, God.
But I don't know that he didn't, because that's Paratopia.
I don't know. Probably want to edit that out, too.
Right.
But,
I'll add it to the list.
God. There's not much there. And scientifically, we're not making any progress. And I hope that that changes. And I frankly don't care if it's Budd or David, you know, who does it, but I hope that somebody decides to move forward. This isn't getting us anywhere.
Well, we're trying.
Yes. But as the teacher, I can tell you that you do have to repeat yourself to the point where you're exasperated. And, you know, just keep getting the message out there.
Right.
So, I mean, in one sense, you guys actually are teachers, like it or not. Welcome to my world.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. So, but I tell you, I wasn't gonna kid you here. I hadn't thought we'd be talking about the dude in the black hood, and that's something I hadn't really thought about for quite a while. I put it in the video because it is something that has terrified me forever. And I can't even exactly say why, but now you're really getting me intrigued because we have all these anecdotal coincidences. You know, what is the basis of this?
Well, I guess we will leave it on that note of mystery, and we may not be able to know who or what the man in the black hood is, but perhaps he has given us something that we can figure out scientifically, which is, you know, rapid eye movement with the release of some chemical, you know, that dates back to hunter-gatherer days. I don't know. But we will definitely follow back up with you on that. And thank you again for coming on the show and for being friends with us. And if, you know, we do a lot of private emailing, our little clique of friends. And if it gets too much for you, just let us know.
The only thing I ask is that Carol Rainey not tell me anything more, because I can't take it. Every time she tells me something, I have a heart attack.
Yeah.
So
there's that.
There's that. Yeah. So no, the emailing and all that is fine. It's fun.
All right. Great. Well, take care, and thank you again for all your time.
You.
Hello, this is Raymond Moody, and you are listening to Paratopia.
Paratopia. Paratopia. Paratopia.
so the Jeff.
And so the Jer.
And so it begins. I was talking...
I think we're at the end, actually, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
Jesus. That's a different show. Those jokes are for a whole other show. I was talking to my friend Melissa Reed today, who listeners may recall was in the Georgia Guidestones episode. And I was telling her about your interaction with Mr. Shroud Man and what he said about the computers. And she brought up a really good point, which is, how far does that extend? Do you think that, I mean, if you trace back when Wall Street really started becoming a criminal enterprise, does it go back to sitting in front of computers all day long? Like, what are the other ramifications? If you look at these, kid killers with guns, walking around a hypnotic state, is this affecting them? If you have a teen who is sort of psychotic to begin with, or a sociopath to begin with, and you create this further chemical imbalance, is that what's going on? I mean, who knows? But certainly there are some great implications here for what we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think of it in, I guess I have to draw somewhat more, I don't know if you call it lesser evils to that, but, look at, I would say, just take an overall bit slice of people and look how you've seen people change since the internet really took off. I mean, I didn't even think today, what point did the internet really take off, and what point did everybody kind of jack in and this became like a big deal? And I don't really know. It was a gradual thing, but one of the things I thought about me, and I asked my wife about, was, I've been on the net in one incarnation or another since there were bulletin boards when there wasn't any internet. I remember actually Lee Townsend, the past guest, was the guy who I first chatted with online, because he came over. He says, they got these great things called modems, and you got to go get one, and that way we can plug it in the phone line and talk. And then that kind of blossomed for me into a message board, or a bulletin board rather, called the Launchpad, which was out of Maryland, and a little burb somewhere. And I began that. So I asked my wife Lisa the other night. I said, before the net came around, was I happier? And she's like, yes, you were.
Well, here's the other good thing about Melissa, is that she isn't on the internet. She doesn't have a computer. She just got a computer a few weeks ago for the first time. She got a laptop. Wow. She has no idea even how to use it.
Wow.
Right. And so she said to me, it was like one of those aha moments. She's like, I knew it. I've been telling my friends this, whenever I see them online, they're always more irritable. They're always meaner.
Right.
Right. And they're always short. They're always short with you when they're online. And she's like, I knew it. I just knew it. I didn't know what it was, but yeah. So I think this really resonates and makes a lot of sense. The only thing is, we were talking about, I think, just privately, in terms of watching TV or playing video games, there's something about being hypnotized by that light, staring at the shiny object, and being hypnotized by it, and you don't want anyone to interfere with that. They get in the way, you're like, sit down. You just sort of slur some like, get out of here kind of thing. Don't bother me.
Shut up.
And I don't know that can really be attributed to a chemical release in the brain, or just this, whatever that hypnotic connection is, but maybe they're all a piece of the same puzzle.
Good point. I don't know. It occurred to me today, going to work, that I've spent, I live a good distance from work, and so I spend a lot of time on the road. And one of the things that I've noticed lately is just the craziness of driving. And I don't know how far that extends beyond the borders of my own town, but I think it's been pretty evident to me today that even driving habits, the nature of road rage and how careful people drive is light years different from when I first started driving. I mean, it continues to get worse. And when I sat and thought about that today at work, I was like, you know what? It seemed like when everything got plugged into the net and all this interaction started, all this interactive, everything being interactive, that's when I noticed, it is kind of weird that there became a more aggressive thing on the road. And none of this says that the internet is bad and you all should stop using the internet and all. It's not that. I think it is. It's more along the lines of everything in moderation, I guess, is the feeling I get about it.
Well, I think it might be the thing that you think won't happen, which is invention, that this needs to be discovered for reals and invent a workaround. There's got to be some way to make it so that this isn't how we perceive the thing in front of us,
Right. Well, I wonder if it's, if the answer is audio, and if it's audio, what then is, what's going to be the next, pitfall of audio? Like, well, the transmission rate of the audio is affecting people to do whatever more. You have to wonder if the outside stimuli of any sort of interfacing with an electronic device is not all that great for us. What I thought was interesting was Tyler talking about, essentially we're some sort of evolved monkey. And therefore, our bodies are not, essentially set up for all this technology interface that we have.
Well, that's essentially what the dude said to you, isn't it?
Well, in so many words, yeah, I guess that was it, is that, your technology has out-evolved you. And while, I'm sure we're going to look back at this at 10 years and go, wow, remember when we used to have to get online to a computer, and now all we do is sniff it up our nose and it attaches to our cortex, and where is it going to go? I don't know, but yeah, there was the overwhelming feeling of, as far as a biological thing, you are not as evolved as what your technology is becoming, and therefore it's having this impact, which on some levels is good and other levels is detrimental and could be very serious.
The thing I find just sort of fascinating about that from sort of the New Age perspective is we always hear this, that you're growing technologically faster than your spiritual growth, and that's the problem. But that's not what this guy's saying. He's saying your technological advances are growing much farther than your biological capabilities allow.
Right.
I find that interesting.
Well, either that or we're not actually thinking about the method of delivery of information the way we should be, I guess, or something that's compatible with what we are. I always thought to myself, the notion of anonymity on the internet is why there is so much opportunity for chest thumping and outright rudeness and nastiness and all of that infighting stuff that goes on in any online community, whether it's collecting China dolls to ufology, and it turns out I don't necessarily think that's it anymore. It may be it's certainly a portion of it, but I've got to think that just the notion of people who are on the net a lot and are reading a lot and are studying or whatever, that is this part of it? Is this not perhaps maybe more the bulk of the reason is that we immediately go into defense mode because our eyes are telling our brain just by their movements, there's a predator to be looked for here. And so we become predatorial in that moment. So I don't know. It's it's very interesting. And just as a side note to this, Dr. Kokjohn wrote me today about what he found out from his pharmacology folks. That now, I'm not going to name the doctor, but he says essentially that he agrees that epileptic seizures can be induced by flashing lights. In fact, he told me that a test to reveal that propensity is to use slow strobe flashes while monitoring brain waves to determine if they exhibit synchronization. And the mechanism as to how brain waves really neuronal electrical signaling gets signalized is unknown. So the answer to that is they don't know why that does that. As to whether a computer monitor can exhibit such defects on the brain, he said that the doctor's reply was decidedly negative. The pulse rate also, although sometimes unnoticeable, is simply too fast. And let's point out the slowest rates are 30 hertz, to provoke an epileptic episode. The subject of quick eye movements and mood cognition, he was uncertain. He does allow for how adrenaline and stress response chemicals can dramatically impact behavior and physiology. So if there is a stress triggering with these eye movements, maybe some consequent effects follow that. And he did make mention at the end that both he and the doctor that he consulted with know very little about serotonin, but he was stumped to come up with a compound having a similar name. He said if you happen to come across anything more specific to send that along, and he'll ask him again. So the answer is they don't know.
And isn't it funny, once again, trickster or whatever, that the most important part here, you don't remember.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah. I honestly don't remember.
You remember everything else about that conversation, just not the chemical.
Pretty much. Yes, I do. Just not the single chemical name. And I'll tell you, in just this evening, I fell asleep on the couch because I'm exhausted from this week, and when I woke up, somehow or another, I remembered that it didn't start with an S. It starts with a C. And it's something with it's not, I just remembered it's like something with a C, not an S. And it's not even the S sound from a C. It's something else. And so I'm just going to have to think about it. I'm sure at some point I'll either remember it or maybe it'll be clarified. I don't know.
Yeah, think about it really hard and then forget about it. And then when you're in the shower, it'll come to you. That's how it always happens.
Maybe, who knows? But either way you cut it, I mean, Tyler did kind of say, yes, that, eye movement can have an effect on the brain chemistry. And is that what we're doing? And so, I don't know. It's certainly made me want to detach from the internet more so. I think I mentioned that once I'm on the net and online and plugged into a machine literally all day at work. And so when I come home, I most of the time do my best to stay away from it and just kind of do whatever. I do something else, usually just try to get into working with my hands or cooking or sleeping on the couch. And so,
don't you find it odd that we even have a consensus reality, given that if you're a jogger, you'll have runner's highs. If you're a lazy slob eating Hostess cupcakes, you'll be depressed and you'll maybe get, sugar dizzy. If you meditate, you have all those experiences. It's like there are all these different normal, I want to say fluctuations, but various states of consciousness that we all live in or have access to on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Isn't it amazing that we have anything consensual at all about reality?
In a way, yeah. Well, I think this is, and what we're talking about here, barely seems to resemble a paranormal conversation other than, what I think is the origin of it. But, in thinking about this today, I was like, what, this really is important to look at. If there's any meaning to this at all, to this idea of our eye movements and how that affects our brain chemistry and all of that, I think that is a cue for just say a guy who goes out to a haunted location who is studying the ghost phenomena. Like I think that guy should take pause and say, what is my behavior like? What are my eyes doing? Like, take stock of that kind of thing and see if acting or behaving or doing things differently in a situation like that affects the investigation or what you see or don't see. I think that would be an interesting thing to kind of test out, because I think anything that has to do with the nature perception of what's around us and how brain chemistry works is paramount to studying this stuff. And so that, to me, that's got a direct connection with all of this. It's like, what are we doing, even when we're studying this phenomenon in a direct situation like that? I think that's an important thing. I mean, there's no question when you're talking about ghost hunting that people do this in the dark. Mm-hmm. So that right there is going to have some kind of effect. I mean, when we went to Gettysburg, Jeremy, did we investigate anything in the dark?
Yeah.
No.
What do you mean?
I mean,
no?
it was dim, but it wasn't like we were walking around with night vision goggles on in darkness.
Oh, you mean in the house?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it wasn't. It's like we didn't do that, and we still had experiences at Mark Nesbitt's place.
Well, and in the dark, your eyes widen. You allow in more light.
Right.
And
there are visual effects to being in darkness that are to do with your eyes adjusting, and often those have effects of flashes or kind of I don't know. Everybody's probably had that peripheral flash of light, or that peripheral afterglow of a light bulb beside you that you see when you turn off the light and you're in darkness. Those kind of things happen when you're getting used to darkness. And so how much of a part does that play in personal experience if that's what you're doing? You're putting yourself in absolute darkness, looking for something that is hard to perceive anyway. And what do you think is going on with that investigator as he's going through a house that he's not familiar with? Do you think his eyes might be moving around, darting back and forth a bit? I bet they are. And so maybe this is something that even in that realm, they could look at what is the behavior pattern when they go to investigate a place like that. What are they doing and how are they perceiving their surroundings? And therefore, could there be an explanation to some of these things that it's brain chemistry making us look for predators? And I think anything you can do or talk about when it comes to behavior versus physiology, and then that ultimately boils down to your nature of perception, is pretty relevant to all of this stuff, to all these topics.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think we've made that case pretty clear on this show.
Oh yeah.
So I think we should wrap it here.
Sure.
We gave these bastards 2 hours last week of After Chat.
After
a 2-hour
these people
show.
Pay the bills.
These sons of bitches don't deserve... Oh, you're right. So some very special thanks again to Dr. Kokjohn, because again, it was supposed to be, a 15-minute to 20-minute chat, and it ended up being about an hour and a half, and he actually welcomed it. So thank you again. And I always do this, right? I always want to wrap, and then I say something, and then we end up chatting for more. Okay. I'll try not to do that here, but what do you make of his mentioning the guy in black, his sort of guy in black fear, or guy in black shroud fear?
I don't know, perhaps some small seed planted in youth. I don't know. I mean,
it did sound like he was saying at first that, well, why do you think I have that in my video? Didn't it sound like he was admitting something here, and then he pulled back on it?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I'm not saying he did pull back on it. I think he's completely open and honest that nothing did happen that he knows about, but that he knows about is the key there.
Well, that he has fear about. It's. I mean, who can think about that image, that descriptive image of this guy standing there who's very tall in this black garment or extraordinarily dark blue garment, and not see that as sort of a Grim Reaper-ish type figure, I mean, it is kind of a ghoulish visage when you really think about it.
Well, yeah, but why would he?
So it's
why would he
it's
have
got
a
an
childhood
inherent
fear? It's not. I mean, I'm assuming. I don't know how old he is, but I'm assuming he's older than we are, and he probably, wasn't a kid when Star Wars came out, so he doesn't have the Emperor to fall back on. It's like,
something dark side. Yeah, I don't know.
Although he sounds really young, so maybe I'm wrong.
He does. I don't know. I could chalk it up to that. It's a pretty creepy. It's a pretty creepy visage, and who knows? There may be some kind of we can't say that he's the only one who's had to say, "Oh, that's really a creepy thing." That kind of sets me a little uneasy. Just that my mental thought of what that would look like. I mentioned in the show that people using the psychomanthium see these cloaked figures that are, when I read the description of some of them, I'm like, man, that's so it. This single death shroud looking thing. And
well, you found a picture of some, like a picture from a psychedelic trip that was a guy in a shroud sitting, in a meditative posture. Yeah, it was basically a website that had artwork on it that was all very well. It was from one particular artist, I think. It was all very psychedelically based or influenced imagery, and that was one of the imagery pieces. Was kind of a blue glowed low light figure sitting cross-legged with the hood type looking thing or a shroud type looking thing, and I was like, So that could be something to start looking through psychedelic circles about. Is this an image that people see in that state? I don't know. It's but I found the connection to the psychomanthium really interesting, and that is, the more I read about it and the more I talk to people about it, they seem to think that there may be a paranormal essence to that, but also that there's definitely some kind of altered state of perception going on, probably by virtue of a certain amount of sensory deprivation. So, there's sensory deprivation. I also think when you are sitting really quietly and intently listening, I think when you use your ears and not your eyes, something changes too.
Yeah.
But again, I want to thank Dr. Kokjohn not just for his time on here, but also watching the way he interacts on message boards and listening to the way he even just speaks with us about things is actually changing.
Inspiring.
It's not just inspiring; it's changing the way I interact on the net now. I'm really trying to take a page from him. So he is slowly but surely becoming a national treasure. This Dr. Tyler Kokjohn.
Yeah, I was, like I said, amazed to see the way he acted on UFO updates, and the way he can hold a conversation is pretty amazing. So he's a pretty amazing guy. I mean, for the position that he holds and the work that he does, to be interested in this and to allot us his valuable time, to discuss this weird shit with us is a pretty great gift as far as I'm concerned. So. Many thanks to him for that, and hopefully he's going to hang out with us real soon again, because he's a good guy to just sit around and talk with.
Yep, and and it's not often that you get a doctor of his stature to not just be as open and honest and talking to us about this stuff, but even in just saying, well, maybe something happened, Yeah. I don't know, but I mean, he would be open to the possibility. I mean, and he even said he had a UFO sighting. It may or may not have been anything. It may have just been a light, but who knows? The fact that he's willing to admit these things and talk openly and candidly, I don't know. It's what a breath of fresh air.
Damn right.
So seek out his instructional videos, such as they are. I don't know that they're really instructional videos, but they're informative and they're cute, and they are on YouTube.
They are great.
If you put in the word Rewinky, that is his account, REWINKY. So go there, go to youtube.com, search Rewinky, and his videos will come up. Give him a look, give him a shout out, tell him you appreciate his work. Let's try to keep him around for as long as we can.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Sweet dreams, Jeff, and take care, Paratopia.
Bye-bye now.